HQ's Journey to Success podcast, the podcast specifically for RT students, because you all are the future of the respiratory therapy profession, and not everything you need for success can be found in your textbooks. I'm Tonya Peel. I am so excited to be here to give you a little guidance and insight, a few tips, maybe a few tricks to help you be successful on your journey through respiratory therapy school. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm so glad you could join me today as we continue to talk about how to study effectively. If you're just joining us, I'm going to give you a really quick recap because you might want to step back 2 episodes and listen to the time management episodes and the learning style assessment episode, because we're going to use elements of both of those podcasts to talk about our topic for today. All right, so let me tell you how this started. I did a survey a couple of months ago to program directors and to students that are currently enrolled in respiratory therapy program. And I asked this question: where do you feel your students struggle the most? And obviously, the student's question was, where do you feel like you struggled the most? And both faculty and students agreed on the top 3 areas: time management, how to study effectively, and how to critically think. So that's what we are working on with these series of podcasts. So a couple of weeks ago, I did the time management series, and we talked about the 3 P's of time management, which was planning, prioritizing, and performing. Last week, we talked about the VARK assessment, V-A-R-K. It is a free assessment that you can take to figure out your preferred learning styles. It kind of gauges the 4 different type of learning styles and gives you a score. If you score real high on one, that's going to be your preferred learning style. That doesn't mean that you can't learn in other ways, but it's your go-to learning style. So we're going to use that a little bit today as we delve just a little bit deeper into how to study effectively. So today's topic is going to be how to prepare for class. All right. So my question to you, and I want you to really think about this: are you preparing for class? Or are you walking into the classroom where your instructor is about to lecture being completely clueless about the topic that's about to be discussed? Because if you're walking in completely clueless, you're having a lot of information just dumped upon you that you're not able to separate and listen and understand. All you're going to do in class is become overwhelmed, really anxious, and typically that turns into shutting down, which means you don't listen and you don't pick up much out of that lecture. You have the power to prevent this. And I'm going to say this as I've often thought in my brain, so you can understand it from an instructor's aspect. There is absolutely no way that I am going to be able to teach strong enough to overcome your lack of preparation. As an instructor, I should never have to work harder for your education than what you do. All right? So this is a partnership. Your learning is a partnership, and part of your responsibility is going to be able to prepare for class. At least you're coming in understanding the topic. You don't have to understand everything about it, but at least you know what's going on, and some of the stuff you're going to be lectured on will sound familiar. So we're going to talk about 3 or 4 different ways today to help you prepare for class before you get that information dumped on you, before you get stressed out, anxious, and overwhelmed. Let's get started. Okay, so here we go. Here is the number 1 step for preparing for class. All right. Over the weekend sometime, you need to carve out 2 to 4 hours that you can plan for the upcoming week. You need to sit down. You need to see what is going on in each individual course Monday through Friday of the upcoming week. If during that week you have new lectures you're going to be exposed to, you need to figure out the reading assignments and the resources your instructor has given you to prep for class. Okay, so this ties into our time management episode that we did, that you have to plan. You have to plan for this upcoming week. You have to prioritize. Okay, will you look over the content, the resources your instructors have given you prior to class? Okay, that is prioritizing. And then performing. You got to make yourself do it. You're not going to be able to take control of that anxiety, that feeling of being overwhelmed, the fear of failure until you start prepping yourself. All right, so the first thing is to look at the upcoming week to see what's going on. Now, most commonly, your instructors are going to give you resources. So here's step number 2. Step number 2 is to read the textbook. Okay? Your instructors are going to tell you which chapters, which book and which chapters the content they're going to lecture on comes from. Now, that might be the only resource you're given. So we need to understand how to read a textbook. Okay? And nobody wants to read a textbook. Nobody, well, if they do, they're just a little odd. Nobody sits down and reads Egan's Fundamentals of Respiratory Therapy for fun, okay? And you definitely don't read it like you would a novel. You don't start at the beginning and read to the end. And you should never think that that's how to read a chapter. You don't start with paragraph 1 of your chapter and read continuously to the end of the chapter, the summary and the example test questions. That's not how you approach it. I'm going to give you a method for reading, and it's called the SQ3R method, okay? And the important thing to understand about this method that I'm going to give you is that each step in this method can be used by itself, so you don't have to feel like you have to do every single step. So SQ3R, so that's 5 steps. If you just do the first 3 steps that I'm going to give you to reading a textbook, you're going to be pretty adequately prepared for class. Okay, so here's what we need to do first. Okay, S in SQ3R stands for survey. Okay, you need to survey the chapter. This is taking a bird's eye view of the chapter. So you're going to skim the material. You're going to get a good feel for the main topics that are in that chapter and the idea of those main topics. So this should take maybe 10 minutes. And I'm one of these kind of people that I like to actively write when I read. So what I would probably do is start making an outline. So I would look at the introduction and I would skim through the introductory paragraph because that's going to tell you what the entire chapter is about. The next thing you want to do is go through and look at the headings and the subheadings of that textbook. And you're not reading for knowledge at this point in time. You're just looking to see the layout with the settings and the headings and the subheadings. You can look as you're doing the survey going by section. You need to look at pictures and charts or any graphs, anything that's visual that will help you pull this information into context. So after you look at all the headings and subheadings, look at the pictures, the next thing you want to do is read the chapter summary. You have the intro of what it's about. It should summarize it at the end. And if you're going to go a little bit further than that, you could look at the study questions at the end of the chapter. Okay? So now, notice, we haven't read for learning yet. All we're doing is taking about a 10-minute skim to get an idea, a bird's eye view of what the chapter is about. That's the first step in reading a textbook. Survey. The second step in our SQ3R method is the Q, which stands for question. All right, so during your survey, you came up with all the headings and the subheadings. All you now have to do is take a heading and each subheading and turn it into a question. So for example, let's say your instructor told you to read chapter 16 in Egan's, and chapter 16 is about bedside assessment of the patient. And the first subheading, let's just say, happens to say interviewing the patient and taking a medical history. All right. So you know that that's the big heading. And so you turn that into a question. What is the purpose of interviewing the patient and taking a medical history? When you turn that into a question, then what you're doing is you are reading to answer the question you just asked. Okay? Let me give you another example. So the subheading to this, interviewing the patient, taking medical history, the subheading is going to be principles of interviewing. So that's a subheading. You've already written it down. Now turn that around and make it into a question. What is the process of gathering relevant information during interviewing? Or maybe what are some factors affecting communication between the RT and the patient? So do you see, with those questions, then you can read to answer those little short questions you've made for yourself. All right. So actually, I just rolled into the third step, which was reading. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is survey. Okay. Make note of your intro, your headings, your subheadings. The second step is to turn those headings and subheadings into questions. And then the third step is going to read the content under the headings and the subheadings to answer the questions you just asked. And see, you're not studying for a test. You're just getting prepared for class. If you just do these first 3 steps in the SQ3R method, you're going to be adequately prepared for class. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and roll through step 4 and step 5. So the first R was reading. The second R was reciting. So basically, reciting is answering the questions. Can now somebody ask you that question and you recite the answer? And then the last is reviewing, to conduct a review of that content, hopefully within about 24 hours for maximum comprehension, to lock that into your memory. Okay, so SQ3R, survey, question, read. That's really all you have to do before class. Recite and review. Okay, now I know some of you are going to say, okay, but that's great for people that like to read and write, and that's not my preferred reading style. Oh yes, anybody can read a textbook, and I'm going to tie this now into your learning styles. For example, if you are a visual learner, as you're looking at those headings and subheadings, if you have the physical textbook, you actually have the hard copy textbook in front of you, you take a highlighter and all the headings you highlighted in a specific color. Your subheadings, you highlighted that in another color, because if you are visual, you need that information separated out in your mind, and you do that with color. As you're surveying the chapter, pay attention to the charts and the diagrams, because if you're a visual learner, that clicks in your brain. So see, a visual learner can read a textbook. An oral learner can also. If you learn by hearing, that also means you learn by listening, talking, and discussing. So as you're reading, read out loud. Yeah, listen to your voice say the words. That's going to help you. Hey, maybe you can even do it as a group. Maybe 3 or 4 of you that all learn through the oral method can get together and have discussions about how to set up the headings and the subheadings. Maybe you can make questions with each other, and through that discussion, you can read the textbook. If you are a writing person, if you're a writing person, reading the textbook and writing the headings and the subheadings down, this is right up your alley. So in the SQ3R just plays into that strength. Now, kinetic people, reading a textbook is probably the hardest for kinetic learners. Okay, kinetic learners like to put their hands on, and they like to do what they, to do things to learn. But kinetic also means movement. Okay, which means the worst thing you can do is sit in a chair and try to read a textbook. So what I would tell you is maybe get up, maybe have a dry erase board that's next to your desk, and maybe actively read a section and then turn around and write it on your whiteboard. See, that's movement that keeps you from being stationary, keeps you from being in one place. So you can read a textbook no matter what your preferred learning style is. But the thing is, people don't like to take time to do that. You have to perform in respiratory school. And one of the things you absolutely have to do is read a textbook. So try the SQ3R method and see if that works for you. Okay, so let's say that you are just flat out not going to read a textbook. You know yourself, you're not going to do that. You're not. All right, we got to figure out some other way to get you prepped for class. All right, you still need to look at that upcoming week. You still need to know what type of lectures you need to prepare for. If you're not going to read the book, maybe the instructor has some videos embedded in your learning management system. And when I say your LMS, I mean like Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle, whatever your college uses. Typically, instructors make modules for you, and in those modules, sometimes they may have embedded videos. Watch those videos. So those of you that are visual, that works. Those of you that are auditory, that works too, because the videos are going to tell you. Some of you that are kinetic, some of those videos may be the how-to video. All right. So everybody can watch a video if that's available to you. Let's say that your instructor doesn't embed videos into your modules in your learning management system. That means you're going to go out and search online. So I'm not going to say who's good and who's bad. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 suggestions for people to go to, and then your instructors can tell you other ones that they feel are good quality content instructors. So, number 1, go to Respiratory HQ on YouTube. I've got a lot of videos. I promise my content's solid. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. All right, so there are lots of free instructional video out there. The second person I am going to recommend is Respiratory Coach Joe Lewis. Look up his YouTube channel. He's been doing this for about 5 years now. He has a lot more content out there that is free that can help you with class. So if you are looking at your schedule and you see that you have patient assessment, go through his YouTube channel and search for specific topics so that you can be prepared to enter class and have at least an idea of what's going to be lectured on. All right, so how else can you prepare? If you're not going to read the book, or if you don't have videos to watch, maybe your instructors have given you their resources. For example, I give my students handouts of the PowerPoint notes, and I also give my students lesson objectives. So if that's what you have in your learning management system, I would tell you to look through the PowerPoint. You can read through the PowerPoint almost like you read through a textbook, because when you're building a PowerPoint, you work off of headings and subheadings. So survey the PowerPoint, pick out your settings and your subheadings, and then go back and ask questions, and then read the slides to answer those questions. Good thing about PowerPoint also, I do this a lot. I embed charts, I embed pictures, I embed video within my PowerPoint. So be sure to use that if it's a resource. If your instructor's giving you lesson objectives, go and answer those lesson objectives before class. And if you can't answer the lesson objectives, those would be great questions for you to ask of your instructors. All right, now let's say that you have absolutely no resources to help you prepare for class. Let's say you haven't been given a reading assignment, there's no videos embedded, there's no PowerPoints for you to preview, no lesson objectives. This is where then you need to have a very professional conversation with your instructor. Your success is going to depend on you being able to prepare for class. And I would just sit down and have an honest conversation about you want to be successful. And if you were given a little bit of insight of what you could use to prep before you came into class, there's not an instructor out there that's not going to be willing to give you at least a chapter in the book to read. Okay? So everybody can prep for class. There's no excuse not to. And it's going to really, guys, it's going to decrease that anxiety and that fear and that feeling of being overwhelmed. You're going to go into class feeling a little bit at your best advantage. You're going to be prepared. You're going to feel in control, and your brain is going to be able to process that information easier because it's already just a little bit familiar. All right, so let's just recap what we talked about today. We're talking about how to study effectively in regards to how to prepare for class. So the first step in preparing for class is to plan over the weekend. Look at your schedule, see what's coming up, plan on what you need to prepare for, and then do it. All right. Do it by reading the textbook. And we talked about the SQ3R method. Maybe do it by watching videos. If that doesn't work, maybe use your instructor's notes or PowerPoints, or look at lesson objectives. And finally, if you have no resources available to you, have a talk with your instructor and ask for some type of resource to help you prep and be successful in school. I hope this has helped. I want you to join us next week. Next week, we're going to start talking about how to take notes effectively during lecture. Have a great week. Study hard. I'll see you soon.